That's our connection. Welcome back to No Holds Barred Special Edition. What if video only for you YouTube subscribers and people who randomly find us? We love you. Leave us a comment, a like, subscribe. We do a lot of content here on YouTube. We also simulcast a lot of our longer form podcasts on audio on any podcast application. Just search North South Connection and you can subscribe. We're also all across social media. On this series here, it's me, JT, along with Aaron. We are your hosts of No Holds Barred that drops every single Saturday. We do some drafts. We are currently going through the every dirty world title change ever and ranking them. So that's been a lot of fun. And every week to 2 weeks here, we are doing what ifs. So either fan suggested, if we tap out there, we kind of pull from our internal staff here at the North South. But these have been a lot of fun to do, Aaron.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love the thought exercise. And it's always gone in some strange directions, which is cool too.
Well, this is a fun one. So this one came out of a conversation with me and my buddy Jim Price, who's a viewer of the North South Connection. So shout out to him. Yes.
Is this the one where before you presented it to me, you said, "Fuck what the people want"?
Yeah, I said, "Fuck the people."
Oh, okay, good. I wasn't sure if it was this one or not.
Fuck them hard. This is the one. But no, I am going to attribute it to my buddy Jim because he started talking about the guy we're going to talk about tonight, and it brought this question into my mind because he mentioned the time frame and the guy. So here's the what if. What if in January of 1994, Vince McMahon goes to Scott Steiner and says, "Pal, I want you to be my solo star, and I'm going to rocket push you to the top right before the Rumble." And Scott Steiner, instead of saying no, says yes, because it's rumored at the time that Vince did ask him to go forward with a solo push. And as he had done before and will do again in the future, Scott did not want to bail on his brother Rick, chose to stay as a tag team. Instead, they end up going to work some Japan stuff and are very sporadic in 94 before leaving. And they don't come back around till, I think, 95 ECW and then 96 WCW.
It's so strange that, like, how he hangs on to that team until suddenly he's like, you know what, it's fine now.
Yeah, I think it just got to the point maybe we realized it really ran its course. I think maybe part of it is he didn't trust Vince to protect Rick, is my thought. Like, I think he was probably figuring like...
He's like, Vince is going to make my brother fight a Chucky doll or something.
Well, he's going to be like a Janetti, right? It's probably what he's thinking, right? He's going to push me. Rick's going to be doing fighting doink and shit. I think by that point in WCW, they were like embedded in WCW. So I think he knew like Rick was fine or safe and it was time. But as I was thinking of this and we're talking about his career, and this is why we're waiting to the 20 minutes of fucking previews for The Flash when we went to go see that. It was like 20 to 25 minutes of previews. It was ridiculous. It was like,
and then the commercials, and some of the commercials played 2 times.
It was a 9 o'clock movie. It had to be almost 9:30, and I like previews. I'm not one to complain, but this was like 1.5 previews too many. I'm like, all right, like let's get going here. It's already late. I'm tired. I'm old. Like I'm already gonna be here now, almost till midnight.
I'm already mad it's not a 7 o'clock show.
What are we doing? Anyway, so as we're talking, what struck me as a comparison is like Scott Steiner to me feels like the Barry Bonds of wrestling, right? So and this is what I mean.
The greatest
Barry Bonds had a wonderful career up to 1997. Hall of Fame career. He was athletic. He was young. He was in great shape, but he wasn't cartoonish. He was just an amazing athlete, right? And he was recognized as such. Had this great first half of his career, but does not become a superstar all-time, like superhero, breaking home run records, the focus of baseball until he juices up in 1997, 1998.
You don't know that.
And his head blows up 10 sizes like Kurt Angle in 2005.
They have those weird things.
And decides, like, I'm going for this, right? And then he becomes baseball, for good or for worse. Scott Steiner, to me, feels like it's the same path. Like, he is young. He's always big, but he's young. He's athletic. He's flying around.
You know who Barry Bonds reminds me of, now that you've said it, is the mascot for the Cincinnati Reds.
Right.
The baseball head guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Big head.
Yeah.
So Scott Steiner is lauded as a great in-ring worker. He probably is a Hall of Famer with the Steiners pre-1997. Like, he's there, right? Yeah. And then he gets fucking massive at the expense of athleticism, starts to break down a bit, but becomes a megastar in the world of wrestling for those few years, right? So it's like it struck me as like, and it's almost same timeline. Like they both start juicing in '98, big time, '97, '98.
Oh, he's juicing earlier than that.
Well, it's like
Scott
he's
Steiner.
always juicing, but I mean, like he gets cartoonishly big in like '97. 97 is when he really
at the beginning, but early at the beginning of '97, he's already like when he comes back and he starts wearing the like single color singlets. Like the black or the white, while Rick is still wearing fucking Tutti Frutti all over him. Like,
he's huge.
Like, he's disgusting.
But that's around when Bond starts too, because he starts right around McGuire and Sosa and those guys juicing up. Which the home run chase is '98, right?
You don't know that.
So the home run chase is '98, but they were already starting to get big. McGuire was already bulking up. So anyway, he was jealous and he wanted the thing. You should read the book if you haven't read it. So anyway, this all brought me back to because Jim said like, why was he not a star until then or whatever? And I'm like, well, it's because of the Rick thing. So that took me back to remembering that Vince did want to push him. And my question to you, if Scott agrees, what does 1994 look like? Like we've already kind of did this, right? Where we've kind of screwed Bret because what was the what if we did where Bret kind of gets those? It was Sid, right? Sid okay, so this may be similar, right?
Oh yeah, Bret's getting
but the difference is the big guy era has ended.
Yeah.
Right. When we did Sid, it was still kind of there, right? But like now, Bret has been established. Bret has been a world champion, but he's not as 1994 starts as Yokozuna.
So allow me just to throw this out there. I was actually talking to our buddy Marcus about this the other night, and my assertion about Bret is he's not the guy until WrestleMania 10.
Correct.
Like he's been a world champion, but he's an anomaly world champion. In fact, he's the only face up until that point. I think he's the only face champion that wasn't given a massive coronation, like whereas everybody else was. I mean, back in the MSG days, it was harder, but like everybody else, it's WrestleMania, right? Yeah, it's Hogan leaving Hogan, Savage, Warrior, like. They're the ones leaving WrestleMania. So my buddy, I have another buddy named Jeff, and we've had this theory forever, is that like whoever the face is coming out of WrestleMania with the world title, that's the guy. Right. That's who they consider the guy, right? And so if you win the title and don't come out of WrestleMania with the championship, you're not the guy yet. You're just not, right? And so I think as much as, just to jump onto what you're saying, he's been a world champion, but he's not the guy.
No, I mean, you could argue he's the first ever transitional face world champion they had. Because if you think about it, like you had Bruno, you had Pedro, like Hogan. Was there any other faces in between them? No, right?
No.
Right. Okay. So Bruno, Pedro, Hogan.
They went back to Bruno. That's why it's weird.
Backlund. Savage, Warrior. Backlund's not transitional.
He's not, that's what I mean. He's
Warrior. Is Bret after Warrior? He goes back to Hogan. Yeah.
Yeah, as a face, yeah.
The only one you could argue would be Savage. But that goes against your theory where he is leaving Mania as a world champion. Yeah, so he is the guy in '88. Even though they knew eventually he was going back to Hogan.
Yeah.
He's presented as the top guy. So yeah, I would argue Bret's probably your first ever transitional world champion in '92.
Which is only important in this conversation because he's not made yet.
Correct.
He's not, I mean, he's made in some ways, but he's not made in the way that like Savage, Hogan, he's not made in the way he is after WrestleMania 10 when he's on their shoulders and Vince is in the ring cheering. He's made. He's a main eventer forever, right?
So the question though is, I mean, that could still happen because Steiner, like, are they really going to push him that fast? Because he's still like, the Steiners are still a thing until like November, December, right? So that's why I said January of '94 because I don't think it's starting before then.
Yeah.
So are they really going to have him win the Rumble like as a tag? Because he's not established as a solo act yet. So in my world, he gets that Jesus push, but I think the guy who ends up getting screwed is Diesel.
And so it's funny because when you said what does '94 look like, my first thought was, whoa, wait a minute, what does '95 look like?
Yeah, I think Diesel gets screwed
because let's say he does get the rocket push right away. He wins the Rumble and wins the title at Mania, let's say. I feel like '94 is probably not as good, right? Like Bret's a great. I mean, you could. That being said, you could still do all the great Bret stuff, like because I mean, what you're losing is the title reign, right? But like you could still have Bret fight Owen at WrestleMania. You could still have Bret fight Backlund. You could still have Bret fight Owen in a cage at SummerSlam. Those can all still exist, right?
But I think I think he gets the belt still because they still loved Bret. Bret is still a thing.
Yeah.
And I think Steiner, this is why I think Diesel gets fucked the most because I don't think he gets the Rumble push. Steiner gets that push.
Yeah.
Steiner's the guy who cleans house, throws out 10 dudes, and gets the Jesus push. And Diesel doesn't get saved with that moment, right? So maybe he sticks around, maybe Shawn, well, or maybe Shawn goes to bat for him, right? I don't know if they're already boys or whatever, but he may like get him to stick around, but he's not going to get that run up through 94 that he gets. So I think they end up pushing Steiner up that level. Does Razor Ramon? I mean, so how does that affect Ramon, right? Because now you kind of have two guys at that level at the same. And Undertaker, he's out for most of '94. But
I think Ramon is like I think he's doing his own thing. Like he's involved.
Yeah, but so what does Steiner do though in between those two? Is what I'm saying.
If it's Vince, I don't think he waits with Steiner. He might, but I don't, because it's not only. I agree that he likes Bret, right, and he maybe even loves Bret, right. But I don't see him crowning.
Why not? He did it anyway, and then he crowns Diesel in November.
But he didn't crown him right? And I think he crowns Diesel. Like, he crowns Diesel by accident, right? Like, he doesn't start 94 thinking, I'm going to make Diesel my champion by November.
Yeah, but I think he could do a world where he's like, Bret gets his moment, has a feud with Owen, and then Steiner... we transition someone from Bret to Steiner, and Steiner's my guy that I'm going to run with. But we got to build him because back then he didn't. I mean, I guess Hogan, but beyond that, he usually built the guys, right? So it's like, Steiner going from a tag team to winning the Rumble to winning at WrestleMania is like, I guess. I mean, Diesel does it basically, but Diesel becomes a star throughout '94. Like, he's a bigger deal as the year goes than Steiner would have been. Like, that's why I think Steiner just gets the big Rumble push of like throwing 9 guys out. Has a good run and then gets eliminated. Maybe he gets teamed up and thrown out. At Mania, who does he go over at Mania? Who's around that could be?
You can fight Bam Bam.
Yeah, say Bigelow, Jarrett. I mean, like whatever. He crushes someone, right? Maybe he wins. Well, I guess Owen's kind of going to win King of the Ring, but maybe it's Steiner in the finals gets screwed,
or he doesn't need to in this era. Like, that's the thing, is that all of these things. I don't disagree that they could still do. I could see Vince's mindset being like, well, Bret Owen doesn't have to be for the title.
Yeah.
Like, and I could see him also thinking like, imagine Scott Steiner suplexing Yokozuna.
Yeah.
Like, I could see him making Steiner at Mania by doing all this crazy power stuff on Yoko. I could see both, right?
Well, and this goes actually, if you want to dial it back even further, it's an article I've shared a lot over the years, but I wrote one like probably a decade ago. If not Luger, who should have been the choice to slam Yokozuna? And Scott Steiner was actually my pick. Right. So, like, if you really want to go back, like, you could have Steiner slam Yoko in the Intrepid.
Yeah, and you build him up throughout 93.
Be Luger and keep Luger as a heel.
Yeah.
I think if you have Steiner in 94 too, maybe it allows you to turn Luger back in 94. We didn't talk about him at all. And maybe you do Steiner versus Luger while you're doing Bret versus Owen. That's an option. If Bret does win the belt, does Owen have a chance at winning it? Does Owen win the belt from Bret and then drop it to Steiner instead of Backlund? Because unless Backlund still has a match with Bret and becomes the guy, right? That could still happen in this world.
Yeah, I think that. I don't know, because they could have done that anyway and they didn't.
Right. Yeah, I think Steiner wins it. If he doesn't win it at 10, I think there's a chance he wins it like in the fall. I don't know if they wait till 11.
No, I don't think. I think he gets the Diesel push, like in terms of like winning the title.
Right.
Which
how does that affect Shawn? You doing Scott Steiner and Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania? I guess maybe.
That'd be a great match.
Yeah.
That'd be really good, actually. You're doing. I think in this scenario, you're either doing Scott Steiner against Shawn Michaels, or you're doing Scott Steiner against Bret Hart.
Right.
To like solidify him. In fact,
that would be awesome as well.
I think the Bret Hart one's probably more intriguing.
And like, I'd like it if they kept Rick as a face.
Yeah.
And they're kind of aligned. It's not like they don't turn on each other. And then you could bring them in for big tag matches, right? Kind of like they do with Diesel and Shawn, right? So now you're doing the Steiners versus whoever, right? Yoko or whatever.
I wonder if you turn Bret heel.
They could turn
And
Bret sooner.
if imagine they start doing. Imagine how much better 95 is if they're doing Team Canada, like
Right.
Bret, Owen, Bulldog.
I don't know if they put Bret and Owen together that quick though. It's
Yeah.
still like so fresh. I
Yeah.
think they at least wait till the end of 95 to turn Bret.
Right. But in the scenario, if he's fighting him at Mania, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I think we get Steiner Sean because I think Sean was at some point had to rise. That was like their plan. So I think you get Steiner Sean. You probably don't get any of the Sid stuff. I don't know if Nash is even around. It's like a whole different setup. But
yeah,
like, is he a star? Does it work? I guess that's the question. I think he could have been because we know he can talk.
yeah. We just don't know if he was there yet, but we know the potential's there.
He's got the look. If anything, he's just like another warrior with like the babbling and whatever the fuck.
Well, and then he's a much better worker than the warrior. Like,
yeah,
and this is me saying it, right?
I think it was a miss. I think it was a whiff by him. I think if he does it and the WWF machine gets behind him, as great as Big Papa Cup bump becomes later, and they make their money in Japan or whatever. But like, there's a chance he was the guy for WWF. They needed a fucking guy. Like he could have really been a star for them during that time period when they needed one.
Yeah, and in theory, he could hold that title until 12 and drop it to Sean.
Yeah,
like that would be interesting.
Yep. Yeah, I think it could have been cool. Especially if you go back. I mean, if you really want to go back, like I said, to the Intrepid and have him slam Yoko to plant the seeds, because now you have a reason for him to be. Maybe he slams Yoko. They try and talk him into it, but he says, "No, give it to Lex. We're here for Lex. Like I want to stay with my brother." But then you groundswell it, right? You start to say, "All right, well, Luger couldn't do it, so come on, Scott. Now's the time. Now's the time." And Rick even start. By the time you get to the Rumble, even Rick is like, "You got to do it. You got to go for Yoko. Win the Rumble. Go get Yoko." Yeah. And that could plant the seeds for a Luger heel turn because Luger's jealous, right?
Yeah.
Because he blew his chance, and now Scott does it for America and does it for everyone, right? Yeah. And now the Luger could feud with Rick to try and work his way up to Scott, right? So now you do Scott and Luger at SummerSlam '94 on top of Bret and Owen.
Yeah, and Undertaker. Yeah. Look, they're not changing that. They're not going to change it.
That doesn't exist in this world.
They got Leslie Nielsen.
But you do that, right? So you kind of do Scott Luger, heel Luger at SummerSlam, and then you start to ramp up Sean at the Rumble, 95 Rumble.
Yeah, and then if you have, let's say, or even if you do Bret Steiner at 11.
Or the Rumble, like they did Bret Diesel. You could do it there, too.
Yeah, but I like the idea of Steiner. I mean, I don't really care that Michaels lost the first Royal Rumble and then won the next year and then won it.
But I just don't think they're going to do face-face main event Mania. That's all.
Well, they've done it before.
Before then?
Yeah, they did
Hogan Warrior.
Yeah, I mean,
but it ruined Warrior.
Right, but this wouldn't ruin Steiner, right? Maybe they would like.
Maybe
they like those passing the torches because I like the idea of Sean finally winning the Rumble and winning the belt at 12, and then in '96 you got all these really cool options for Steiner. Like you could have him fight Warrior, you could bring Rick, you could have him fight Rick, like
Mankind,
you know what I mean? Mankind, Austin, Jake. Like there's lots of interesting Vader.
Yeah, Scott Steiner, Vader, SummerSlam '96.
Yeah.
So are you neutering Sean's title run, or are you just saying Scott on the undercard fighting guys?
Undercard. Yeah. You could always bring him back up, or you can always just put him in the tag division again. Like there's just a lot of options with him, like that way.
Yeah, Scott Steiner versus Austin would be great. Yeah, I think it's one of the cooler ones we've done because I do think this is the first one we've done with we've done some with major change because what we didn't even talk about, there's always a constant ripple effect in all these, right?
Right.
The NWO. If Nash doesn't rise, what happens with the New World Order?
Yeah. If Nash is, let's say Nash is fired, right? Let's say he gets fired.
Or he hangs around as a bodyguard for a while, whatever.
Sure.
He's a mid-carder.
Right? Does Sean pressure Razor to stick around more?
Right.
Like, hey, like there's no one left kind of thing, right?
Yeah. Because, I mean, Diesel, because the question is, does he get to that level without the Rumble push, right? So I'm not saying world title level, but did they at least get him up to IC level? Like, does he still have the feud with Razor over the IC belt? Or no, does he need that Rumble push to get there?
I think he could still do it because his feud over the IC belt is an offshoot of the feud with Sean and Razor.
Yeah. So he may still stick around as an IC guy, but he doesn't become fucking Big Daddy Cool World Champion Diesel.
He's not as impressive when because when Scott Hall says, "I've got a big surprise for you," and then he delivers the guy who was champion for like a year, that's meaningful.
Right.
If he's like, "I got a big surprise for you," and he delivers an Intercontinental champion a few times.
Right. And not a guy who, I mean, the reason it was a big deal is because he was the main event star a year earlier for the rival, and now he's here. So.
Yeah. And it's funny because I still think that Hall is the more important cog in that NWO. Right. I think I think it still could work without Diesel. It just doesn't seem as in. I think it could work without Diesel. It wouldn't be as good. I don't think it works without Hall at all.
No. Yeah, so Hall stays the same, so maybe he still goes.
Yeah.
But I don't know who else they bring in. Because I don't think Nash. Steiner?
Maybe.
Maybe Steiner jumps. Maybe he puts over Sean and he's like, I'm out. Like, if you're not going to make me world champion anymore, I'm going to take off. So maybe it's him. Maybe it's Steiner.
And then I wonder if that happens, does the NWO, are they able to maintain the cool heel status with Scott Steiner? Because even when he's Big Papa, he's not a cool heel as Big Papa Pump. Like, he's kind of
more... He was pretty over as the cool heel, like with the Freaks and the Peaks and Medeja and all that.
But it's different than Nash. Nash and Hall was just this easy cool.
I know, they're like the Fonz.
Yeah, whereas Steiner is more like, oh God, this guy's going to murder you. He's cool, but like his appeal is that he's strong and dangerous.
Right. Well, it's an interesting one. If you have any suggestions, reach out. Just leave a comment here or throw it in social media. We'll definitely, we're building a backlog, so we'll get to it for sure. Check out everything we have to offer. North-South Connection, subscribe, audio, video, social. We love you. Talk to you soon.
Bye.